Welcome to the Easy Super podcast. I'm Natalia Clack from Easy Super. Today, we are talking about one of the biggest changes to SMSFs in many years. From 10th of August 2026, SMSFs will no longer be able to borrow to purchase residential property using a Limited Recourse Borrowing Arrangement, or LRBA. If you've been following the news over the past few months, you've probably heard about the ban. But what exactly does it mean? Who is affected? What needs to happen before 10th of August? And what happens after that date? Let's break it down. First, what is actually happening? The new legislation only affects new borrowings used to purchase residential properties inside an SMSF. If your SMSF already owns a residential investment property under an existing LRBA, you don't need to panic. Existing arrangements are grandfathered, meaning they can continue under the current rules. Existing LRBAs, including refinancing of existing loans, are expected to continue unaffected under the grandfathering provisions. Commercial property borrowing has not been affected by these changes. Importantly, SMSFs can still buy residential property after the 10th of August. They just won't be able to borrow to do it. They will need to have sufficient cash available within the fund. Why is everyone talking about 10th of August? The legislation received royal assent on the 26th of June with a 45-day transition period. That transition ends on the 10th of August 2026. For anyone wanting to purchase residential property using an LRBA, the key requirement is to have the appropriate arrangements established and the purchase contract entered into before the deadline, even if settlement occurs later. What actually needed to happen before 10th of August? Many people assumed they simply needed to set up an SMSF before the deadline. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. A residential LRBA involves a number of moving parts. The SMSF needs to be established. The corporate trustee needs to be in place. The bare trust needs to be established. Finance approval needs to be progressing. A suitable property needs to be found. And importantly, contracts need to be entered into within the transition period. Simply creating an SMSF doesn't lock in your rights. Everything has to come together. If you're interested in learning how SMSFs really work, not just property investing, we can help. At Easy Super, we establish SMSFs, provide ongoing compliance, administration, accounting, tax for your SMSF, and most importantly, educate trustees from our SMSF Power Masterclass, SMSF Power Tips, and webinars where we explain everything from contributions and pensions through to property, crypto, tax strategies, and trustee responsibilities. Our goal is simple. We want our clients to actually understand their SMSFs, not just own one. So, where are we today? To be honest, by now, most people who genuinely wanted to establish an SMSF for residential property borrowing have already done so. Over the past several weeks, we've seen enormous demand. People have rushed to establish SMSF, organize lenders, prepare bare trusts, and exchange contracts before the legislation takes effect. For those who are only starting to think about it now, realistically, the window has almost closed. We still don't have complete clarity. One important point I would like to make is this. Even though the legislation has passed, there are still technical questions that the industry is waiting to have answered. Treasury has confirmed that it's working with the ATO to issue urgent guidance because practitioners, trustees, and lenders need greater certainty about exactly what must be in place before the deadline and how some of the transition rules will operate. That's completely normal wherever significant legislation is introduced quickly. At Easy Super, we are monitoring every update from the Treasury the ATO, and the SMSF Association. As further guidance becomes available, we will update our clients and continue explaining what it means in practical terms. So what happens after 10th of August? This is probably the biggest question people are asking. Let's dwell into it. After the 10th of August, residential property borrowing through an SMSF effectively comes to an end for new transactions. However, SMSFs themselves are certainly not going anywhere. People will continue establishing SMSFs because they offer far more than just property investing. SMSFs can still invest in Australian shares, international shares, ETFs, managed funds, commercial property, Bitcoin and other permitted crypto assets, physical gold and bullion, fixed interest investments, or residential property purchased without borrowing. In fact, many successful SMSFs have never owned property at all. Property has always been just one investment option. Will people still establish the SMSFs? Absolutely. We expect the reasons people established SMSFs to evolve. Over recent years, we've seen significant growth in trustees wanting greater control over their investments. Many want exposure to cryptocurrency. Others want commercial property for their business. Some simply want more transparency, flexibility, and control than large retail super funds provide. So, while residential property borrowing may disappear, SMSFs themselves remain an incredibly powerful retirement structure for the right person. The 10th of August deadline marks the end of the era for residential property borrowing inside SMSFs. For many Australians, it has been a valuable strategy for building long-term retirement wealth. But like every legislative change, the SMSF industry will adapt. There will still be opportunities, there will still be strategies, and there will still be people who benefit enormously from having an SMSF. The key is understanding the rules before making decisions. As always, we will continue bringing you updates as more information becomes available from Treasury and the ATO. If you're thinking about setting up a SMSF or you're wondering what your options are after the borrowing ban, we would love to help. At Easy Super, we don't just prepare accountants and tax returns for your SMSF. We educate trustees so they understand exactly how the SMSF works through our SMSF Power Masterclass. And we help establish SMSFs that are built correctly from day one. Thanks for listening to the Easy Super podcast. I'm Natalia Clack, and I'll see you in the next episode.